Hello, everybody. So formal. It's nice to see such an amazing crowd here and such incredible panelists. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And as I said a second before I started the recording, and many people requested this recording, and you may want to, after you learn today, you may want to share it also with your family members or friends. So I will send out the recording eventually to anybody who has registered initially. So, welcome. My name is Yair, and I live in a district called Lower Merion, which is outside of Philadelphia. I am an educator, but for adults, not for children. But I have two young kids in elementary, and in the last year, I've been very interested in what's going on with screens and Chromebooks and iPads and classes, etc. And I think this is going to be a very short introduction because we have a lot to cover and a lot of really fascinating insights from our teachers. But I think that what I wanted to say is that one of the things that I've noticed, and maybe you have noticed as well, that people who are talking about maybe we should curb all the screens in the classes and perhaps we should use, more intentional technology like computer carts or labs to teach about technology, but reduce significantly the education technology to teach about course, mathematics or social sciences. What we hear across the country sometimes is that this is because the parents don't trust the teachers or we have an issue with that. But it's really, really important to understand that this is the opposite. We love the teachers. I can speak on my behalf and my kids. We love our teachers in our elementary. All the teachers that both of our kids had so much that in fact, we just want more and more of this personal, special connection between the teachers and the kids without any digital walls and distractions, etc. So this is all for the teachers and for the children. And I think that, with this, what many of us have noticed in my district and in other districts, that even though you, the four of you, the teachers who are always with the kids when the doors closed, nobody else really knows what is happening. You know what is happening. And in fact, we calculated, the four of us, or the five of us, that between the four of you, there's been more than 100 years of teaching. That's a lot of teaching. And you've seen everything, especially the evolution of the last 20 years. And what you have seen is so remarkable, and all that you know is so remarkable, and proportionally, your voices are not heard. Specifically, in our school district and other nearby districts that I know of, you hear the parents coming up and speaking in the board meetings or sending emails, but often we don't know about what the teachers really think. So because of this is such a privilege to introduce you, and thank you for joining us. So I'm going to just introduce very briefly two of the teachers who are actually in my district in Lower Merion. So Randy Harris, she's a classroom teacher, and she has more than 20 years of education. And she began her career initially at Munich International School in Germany. Then they moved to Philadelphia, and she taught in North and West Philadelphia while earning her master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania. She's a mother of two, and she's now celebrating her 20th year at public school district, where she taught students from preschool all the way to 5th grade. So welcome, Randy Harris with an I. The second person that I wanted to introduce is Dean. And Dean just recently retired, but he's a math specialist who was previously working in different schools, including Lower Merion High School. And after a first very successful career in economic development, commercial real estate, finances, he became a math educator because of true passion. And he has spent the last 13 years teaching at Cheltenham High School, Lower Merion High School, and other places. And in the Lower Merion High School, he really worked closely with struggling math students in small groups and developed individualized progress-based programs. So thank you, Dean, for joining as well. And then the last person I'm really excited to, again, introduce my favorite teacher. I mean, I have a lot of favorite teachers, but she's also a co-moderator with me on multiple of these occasions. And this is Jill Anderson from New York, who is an MA in educational psychology. She's a mom, educator, founder of Mindful Tech Lessons. And with nearly 20 years in education, she has taught students from kindergarten through 6th grade, New York City, Westchester. And she's considered really one of the greatest teacher activists to bring all this movement together across the nation. And she brings both a teacher's and a parent's perspective with a long-standing focus on how digital life is shaping children, families, and learning. So, Jill, why don't you take it away? Maybe tell us a little bit about
Yes,
yourself. You can introduce Randy.
I am very excited to introduce Randy, who I have the privilege on being on a committee with him through Fair Play. He is, well, first, he was a teacher for 32 years, which is incredible. He taught 10 years in middle school, 22 years at high school, all on the science lens, biology, earth science, chemistry. Another role that he took on, he likes to do a lot, I can tell. He was the president of a very large teachers union. And after 32 years teaching, he couldn't stop. So you realize he's now a substitute teacher and an educational consultant for Fair Play and the Screen Time Action Network, which is actually how I first got to know Randy. And it's been wonderful collaborating with him. And I'm so thankful that somebody with so much experience is still so involved in our field because I think veteran teachers have a lot to offer new teachers, and that's important to me. One of the things that I really want to start off is we did all meet last night to talk about this, and we don't all know each other. We're all just teachers that are very passionate and committed to this. Not only do we have a passion and commitment to this, but we realized last night that all of us actually were really excited about technology being used in our profession and really embraced it and have come along a journey and kind of come full circle. So I think it's important to note that we were not teachers that were ever against this or thought this wasn't good from the start. We were very open-minded and wanted to grow. So my first question is, and this might be kind of funny, but what are your first memories of teaching with technology? Like, where did you start? Because we kind of know where we are now. And I just thought that might be like a nice way to set the stage. Let's start with Randy, since I just introduced him, and then we'll go to Dean and then the other Randy.
Thanks, Jill. I remember being so excited writing a grant for the greatest, latest technology, which was a little tiny camera that I could put on the microscope so my seventh graders could see what they were supposed to be seeing on the TV screen. So I'd roll in the TV and the kids would say, "Oh, there's an amoeba, there's a paramecium," and
Oh,
then
that's
on there. So I thought at the time that was the greatest technology, and that was the first I'd ever used tech other than a chalkboard in my classroom.
Well, my first run was with a math uh, application where it was called a calculator-based laboratory, and you could aim the motion detector at an object or at a person, and if the person moved, it would project the graph of the motion onto the screen in front of the class. So this was an amazing way to visualize and to really have the students' bodies create graphs. So if they walk faster, the line was steeper. You talk about slope, and it was really a really effective tool.
I think for me, it would be the smart board. When I got my smart board, it just felt super interactive. And rather than just using a chalkboard or a whiteboard, this felt like something that we could equally enjoy in class and bring workbook pages up onto the screen. And this felt very new and interesting. I do want to say before I say anything else, just wanted to make a little disclaimer to say that all of my views and opinions I expressed during this interview are totally my own, and they're spoken strictly in my personal capacity as an educator, and they don't represent the official stance, policies, or opinions of my school district or employer.
Yes, thank you. It is hard because we wear multiple hats when we are also a teacher, and so we're very conscious of that. And we are speaking as our experience through anywhere we've ever worked, and also because we are parents, so we see that on a different lens. So I guess my next question is, I wanted to know, when did you start to feel a shift in going from being really excited about technology, using it a lot? Like what made you start to feel a little bit more cautious of it? Do we want to continue in the same order?
Actually, before they go ahead, I want to
Oh,
volley
yes, sorry.
back the same question to you, Jill. What was
Oh,
the first question that you asked everybody? Because you told me many times that you were also at the beginning super passionate about this. So I know you're the
yeah.
moderator, but I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts
Yeah.
were.
My first I remember teaching with the actual overhead where I had to make a transparency and I had to copy it and I used the vis-a-vis markers. And when the smartboard came, it was so exciting to not need to have to use that same format, and that felt like a time saver. But back then the projector was on a cart, and if the kids accidentally bumped into the cart, then the whole thing would move, and it was like there was a big shadow, and so it along the way there were all these little bumps with the products, as you know, right? And it was a big idea when it came up to the top, and then you didn't have to worry, nobody could block it, there were no shadows. So I guess I am dating myself with that one.
And also, you'd get the vis-a-vis marker all over your
Yes,
hand. Yeah.
I remember that.
But see, you also had to copy the workbook pages onto those clear pages first. The smart board allowed you to just pull up things, the workbook that was maybe digital, and it made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
So the evolution of the shift in my mindset took a few years. I was all gung-ho for EdTech. I wrote a grant, and I got the first clear touch board, which is similar to a smart touch in my district. I wrote a grant and got a classroom set of VR glasses so we could do virtual field trips in places with science experiments. I wrote a grant for the first set of Chromebooks in my school,
Wow.
which I really shoot myself in the foot. And what I witnessed through that was the first year, oh, this is so cool and exciting, to quickly became a novelty to the children, and then it quickly evolved into a distraction and a headache, and then I quickly retired them to my cabinets. Still using the clear touch board though to teach from, but I saw my students go from really yearning to learn, a great spark of curiosity and excitement for what we're going to do every day, to once those Chromebooks came about, just it's like their curiosity was snuffed out, and it was so quick. They We didn't have the same conversations. We didn't have the same rapport back and forth. It was just give me the assignment, I'm going to bang it out, and then I'm just a police monitor of those stupid Chromebooks. It really changed my career having those things. So uh, it was the change in the children that made me say, I don't want that tech. And then the last few years of my career, I went totally tech free, and what a difference. It was wonderful. The kids loved it. I loved it. It was a great way to end my career, to get rid of that.
Randy, I just want to ask you a follow-up question. What do you think, what is it exactly that you've seen this tremendous shift? What, in your opinion, from your experience and your work, is it specifically like the computers? Is it the screens? Is it the educational content, the gamification? What do you think is it that made such a huge impact on the children?
Whether it's little kids that I see now in the K through 8 school I sub in, or my seniors that I would have, the older students could admit to me, we're addicted. We can't stop checking. We can't stop checking to see how our sports team did, who we're playing tonight. We can't stop checking our messages. And they appreciated me forcing them to, even though they said they didn't like it, they appreciated it. And I just think it's willpower. And you've seen adults who can't go without having their phone in their hand all the time. It's an immediate attraction to a screen, an immediate attraction to that bell or alert that comes on. They just can't control themselves with it. So it takes the forceful saying, we're not using them, to force them to realize I sort of liked that. It was nice not being distracted.
My turn, I guess, right?
Yes.
Well, one thing I just heard Randy say that, that the kids can't stop checking. And that's, because the apps are designed to be addictive. I mean, that's not just the characteristic of the kids. That's a characteristic of the designers who created these things to maximize the clicks. I mean, that's how tech makes money. So that's an important background to all of this. My experience that really turned me against it was the distraction, was the fact that if I looked out in the room and there were laptops, when you see the back of the laptop, and you really have no idea what's going on the other side. That's kind of a startling thing, I think, for people who haven't been teachers, to absorb that we have no idea what the student is doing behind that screen, behind that laptop. And then it gets to be like whack-a-mole. You walk around the room and you catch somebody watching the NBA, and then you talk to him, you try to gently cajole him onto what he's supposed to be doing, but then over there somewhere is someone using a messaging app, and it becomes really unmanageable. And it spoils the relationship with the kid too, because then you're looking over their shoulder, and they're not going to like that. They're going to resent that. You're not respecting them. You're not trusting them, and that's a terrible thing for the teacher-student relationship.
Randy, do you have any thoughts?
Just really coming once we were fully back in person after, the height of COVID, when we were really fully back full time, I had just had enough. I mean, and I knew that, everybody was relying on screens when we had to be home, and we didn't need to do that anymore. And I definitely felt as a mom too, like we're in school, we don't need this now. And so even though we didn't need it, we were just leaning more and more into it. And then all of these other changes were happening with our students. And so that's when I really kind of became more of like a purist, and I wanted them to really lean into all of the touching and the, concrete stuff, and especially in elementary school, but even beyond that, all the way through, kids need to be doing things with their hands and learning things in a concrete way. I was up to here with, I think we all were when we were teaching from home and watching kids hanging upside down in their bunk bed while you're trying to teach them, multiplication, when we had to do that. But now we're still using all of that same stuff in the classroom. We don't need to have a screen in between the teacher and the kid anymore.
Thank you. So, yesterday when we were preparing, we were supposed to have a 15 minutes, like a quick, check-in and conversation, but this conversation lasted to beyond an hour, and we had to go eventually. But the passion in this group is just unbelievable. And we had so many different points that we could touch upon and speak. But I think for the parents who don't usually go into the class and don't see exactly what is happening, maybe I want to hear from all of you, including Jill. What are your thoughts? What do you want to share with us that the screens are affecting the kids? Let's say, the fact that they're on the Chromebook and math and social sciences, etc. Because, for example, I'll just give you an example that Randy from New York was saying yesterday that he has noticed that the speech is different. Maybe the handwriting, maybe the span of attention and the depthness, thoroughness of the work. So this is kind of share some insights that you have from the classroom with us, the parents.
I think parents need to understand that I would say almost all teachers love your children. When we come home, we talk about our children at work. And we use that term, our children, because they're endearing to us as well. We care about them. So I think as nurturers, we want the best for them, just like parents want the best for them. And when we see the copious amount of screen time creating bad habits, creating more speech impediments than I've ever seen, creating high distractibility, the lack of focus, we question ourselves as to what are we doing wrong? How do we fix this? So it's looking at those screens and saying, the kids don't like this software. I don't like this software. I don't like them on the screens. The kids would rather be learning through play. The kids would rather be learning from me and with discussions together. So it takes, just like a parent saying, no, it's dinner time. You'll put your phones away and you won't get them back until tomorrow, or your laptops or iPads, whatever it might be. It takes the teacher saying, no, kids, I know this isn't good for you, so we're not going to use it. And sometimes that takes some guts as a teacher, because you may have administration who's saying, we want you to use this technology. We have newer teachers who feel the pressure to use that technology. but it takes a strong heart and a strong will as a teacher to say, we know this isn't the best for you, and we want the best for our students. So for parents, I want parents to know that your teachers really do care and they want the best for your kids. So if you have concerns about screen time, about one-to-one devices, talk to your teachers about it, because they may just be looking for that nudge to be able to say, we're not going to use those things. Dean?
Well, what was the exact question? I know there's a lot of things we could hit on here, but this was about, I mean, I was going to say something about what it was to be a teacher when it is face to face and when there's no tech between me and the kids.
You can say that, and also, I mean, you can say whatever you want, and I just want to hear your insights and whatever you want to share. The specific question was, what have you noticed when you see kids who are a lot on screens? How is their behavior changing?
Oh, I see. Thank you. I'm sorry that I
No
spaced on
problem.
that. No, I think that the main thing is engagement. I mean, the joy of teaching is to hear the students talking, to make eye contact with students, to have them making eye contact with each other. Um, as a math teacher, there's vocabulary in the math world that you don't hear outside at all. And it's amazing to hear young people using the math words, and just talking to each other or talking to me about the topics and like the eye contact, I guess. And that whole atmosphere is what I really, value as a teacher. And I think it's so beneficial to the students as well. And that's what's missing when the screens are up.
Randy,
The other
Harris,
Mhm.
if you have anything to share.
Well, I feel like I'm also looking at this, through the mom lens and having a middle schooler, and there is so much more in our district, like where we live, just rapidly increased the amount of work that was going on the Chromebook. And it just feels like I think that when kids are working on these screens, it almost feels like the work doesn't matter as much. It's just not as deep and as meaningful. When you can just close it, it's sort of just gone. And then working through, where do I scroll down to this box, or, where do I click submit? And suddenly you're focusing on all of these little tasks to just figure out how to put in your information instead of focusing on the thoughts that you're trying to get down. And I mean, I've seen students when they're handwriting work, like maybe they lose the paper or it rips, just in tears because they put so much work into what they're doing. And I don't think you have that same type of connection and engagement when you're doing something. Close the screen, it's gone. There's just that lack of connection with the work you're doing with the teacher and just lack of connection with the content.
It's
I
hard to
agree.
put it, it's hard to put it on the refrigerator at home, right?
Yes, exactly. And honestly, we've removed a beautiful connection for the parents with their children's work by putting everything on a device. When you don't know what your child is doing because it's all like, Mom, it's on the Google Classroom, or I know that's something that a lot of middle school kids will say. My kids are still in elementary, but like, there's something beautiful when your kid brings home a spelling test and they're proud of it, or a math assessment, or really anything. It doesn't even have to be an assessment, and they're proud of it, and you can hang it up and display it. And like today, I picked up my son. He made the most beautiful. So my son's teacher is incredible beyond belief. And she is a veteran teacher through and through. And she believes in the power of read aloud. She reads the books, and then she does these incredible projects with the books. And I don't know how she fits it in, but it's a commitment she's had. So they just read The Wild Robot this year, and everybody got to make a beautiful diorama of like their favorite scene and part of the book. And then they wrote something, and it was just so cool seeing him get picked up today from school with something like that. And I felt so lucky that was happening for my child, because that to me is true learning. Like, he's going to have his whole life to one day type up a paper about something for whatever job. Like, I've noticed that parents are always rushing to the next thing. And it feels like, in a way, almost like teachers have done that. Like parents are like, I can't wait for you to talk. I can't wait for you to walk. I can't wait for you to use this, that, outgrow this. And it's like, then you realize, oh no, was I rushing it? Like, I don't need to rush these phases. And I almost feel like teachers are doing that with technology. We don't need to rush. They are going to have their whole life to feel like they're stuck in front of a screen for most jobs, and what I noticed is that it was so much work for me as a teacher when I'm committed to working with a reading group, for example, to monitor the other kids. Like you were saying, Dean, it's so stressful. I don't know what they're doing. And then they invented this great gadget where I can see all the kids' screens. Okay, great. So I can look at a box of screens or I can work with the children in front of me. And I was telling a teacher like last year, I was like, I hate that thing. Like it's supposed to help, but it doesn't. And he told me, oh, well, here's what I do. I grab an extra Chromebook and I put it on the table when I work with the kids and I look at their screens. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've never had like the computer with me when I'm working with the kids, in a small group. I don't want to bring that. Like my desktop's there. I'm like, what's the issue? Just add more screens so you can watch screens while they're on screens? Like, this is bonkers to me. And so I committed to just like not doing it this year. And I'm like, this is so much easier because when the kid's off task, he's maybe daydreaming and bored. Do you know what great idea that child could be thinking of while he's bored? Like that I assure you, he wasn't bored on a device. Who knows what he was clicking or doing or whatnot. So like even the off-task behavior when it's analog is better off-task behavior in my opinion. Like,
Jill, before your next question, I gotta say I want to make an observation that I found really interesting because I asked the question to the four of you, what are some of the negative sides of the screens, how it's affecting the less handwriting, the speech. But what I've noticed that the four of you kind of, instead of, talking about the negatives of the screen, you kind of jumped, all of you, and we're talking about the beauty of, like Randy was saying, when a kid is writing this and it's like really coming from their heart and God forbid it gets wet, they become, or the other of you who are commenting on how beautiful the eye-to-eye connection and everything that Jill just said. And I think it really makes me think, because when people sometimes talk about, opting out, education technology and the Chromebooks, etc., many people want to call it opting in to traditional or human-based innovative education. And that's kind of what I felt that I got from this question. You were telling me about the opting into the beautiful education.
Yes.
Okay,
I love that reframing. That is actually a great way to think of it. We're opting into like human connection, and yeah, I love that. So we have two elementary teachers here and two high schools. So I was curious if you guys wanted to share a little bit of like what kinds of concerns do you think are more of an impact? And even if you don't teach that level, that's fine too. Like, what do you think are the biggest concerns with using technology with elementary versus high school? Do you wish, as a high school teacher, there was something elementary teachers knew? As an elementary teacher, do you wish there was something high school teachers knew? And that hopefully parents hearing this from all of us can grab all those pieces with whatever age kids they have, if that makes sense.
Sure. So, as a high school teacher, I would love for all my elementary teachers to know, teach the joy of learning, teach the joy of play, teach the joy of knowing and learning about each other. Because as far as the material goes, it's great, but we need the basics. So reading and writing and the math skills, but do it in a way that's fun. I miss the day when I'd walk by elementary school classrooms and I'd have a kindergarten teacher who's playing their guitar and singing with their kids. Instead, I walk by a classroom and they're watching a YouTube video for their brain break. So I would say to the elementary teachers, always try to let those kids have fun through their learning, because at my level teaching, that's the hardest part of my job, is trying to make the learning fun. It's saying to the children, sure, chemistry's hard, but look at the beauty in it. And let's try to discuss that. And let's try to have fun in the exploration of it and in those conversations. I remember in college talking about lifelong learning, and my goal as a teacher, so deep rooted, is how do we get lifelong learners? And in the last 10 years with EdTech, I saw the joy of learning, the love of learning die.
Yeah.
And I saw kids who wanted nothing to do with learning anymore. How many of you have a child who actually reads a book any longer? I used to,
That kills me.
my high school class used to be full. They used to carry, each one had a novel they would carry with them when they were bored, done with the test early, they'd be reading their novel. You go to a high school now, it's 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 a tiny amount of kids who will carry a book with them to entertain themselves in reading. And if you don't read books in school, you're missing a skill you're going to need in college. But in life, you're missing the whole joy of reading and learning and everything about that comes about with that, with our imagination. So for me, it's definitely everything's about keeping learning so that there's joy in it, there's curiosity in it, because we need that later on in life. If we want to teach kids to be career ready, kids need to be open to learning new things in their career. And that's to me is much more important than any tech app.
Well, as a high school math teacher, my message to elementary teachers is to resist the temptation to kind of fall into this. There's a battle in the math teaching between practice and understanding. And we need both, but there's a pull towards, kind of rejecting the idea that it's this newfangled curriculum that you're going to teach kids to really understand what's going on in math. And I learned math I had 2-digit numbers and I added them. I carried the one and I added them up and I got the answer. What's wrong with that? And I feel like that's kind of there's been some pullback towards that, and that may sound right, a traditional way of doing things, but I'm not a big fan of using all the technology. But that doesn't mean I want to go back to traditional methods, including sort of drill and practice as a way to learn mathematics. There's a place for that, and we have to practice certain things to get fluency with the number facts and all that. But I find I have students who could tell you how to multiply fractions because they learned the method, but they really couldn't tell you whether 1/3 is bigger than 1/2. And that's scary because they just don't even know what a fraction is, but they know if you put two of them next to each other
The
in
trick
addition.
instead of the I hate yes, the trick
Yeah.
instead of the like actual content. And I'm like,
Right.
if you forget the
Right.
trick, you can't solve it. Yep.
Yep. So that would be my plea.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and Dean and I were talking about this a little bit last night about the advantage that elementary school teachers have to form really deep relationships and really know their kids because we're with them all day, often like for more hours than the parents are with them. And so even though high school teachers and middle school teachers are with our kids for a smaller amount of time, I just would my wish is that you would continue to find ways to really know each kid a little bit about like their baseball game they had last night, or how many siblings they have, or the food they hate to eat, things that like elementary school teachers really know about their kids. But in order to really keep our kids committed to learning and engaging, they just want to feel seen and known. And again, that screen continues to be that block. And it becomes a lot more easy, I think, to hide behind it, especially as they get older.
Randy, you hit the nail on the head. What a difference it made when I started going to my students' sporting events, concerts, their plays. It was incredible. The relationship that would form and the bond that would form, and how joyful they would be when they would see you at their event. You came to see my game. I can't believe it. So yeah, things like that really make a difference because it's the relationships that matter.
I totally agree. And that was my biggest shift becoming a parent in general. I started in New York City and it was like we had to give lots of homework. I mean, we were very micromanaged with like how much homework we had to give, what had to be on the bulletin board, when. It was, like we really were worrying about the test scores, the test scores. I mean, this is also 20 years ago when it was like everybody was panicking. And I became a parent and I was like, the actual most important thing is the connection. Because you're not going to get through any curriculum if you don't have a connection. And then when you have that connection, they are more present for the curriculum. Like, and I don't think I got that until I became a parent. And you can hear that a million times. But like the first thing you ask your child when you see them after school isn't like, what exactly did you do in math today? Or what it is like how they felt, like what they had, what connection we had with the teacher. Like I couldn't ask about that project. So, one of the things I'm very worried about with children in general, and this is becoming an issue just across society, is how glued to devices we are. And so I feel this responsibility to give children as many experiences as I can in my class where they are socializing and talking with each other and doing things together because they may not have those experiences outside of class for whatever reason. It could be, they don't have any extracurricular activities. They don't live in a neighborhood where they can explore outside. Who knows? And so one of the things I'm getting concerned about as when I hear about what's happening more in middle and high schools is that it's even more extreme there, that like every teacher doesn't know how much the other teacher has a child on a screen. So I'm with them all day long. So I'm able to know, like, okay, if we did do a project that involved a device for this amount of time, we're not going to do anything else the rest. So I wonder what happens when they go from one class and they spend the entire period on a device, and then they go to the next class and that teacher doesn't know when they spend the entire period on a device, and then they go to the next class and they spend an entire period on the device, and then all the homework is on like this is not a way to live. And it's like they're technically at school but they're not even talking with anyone. So that's one of my concerns as a whole, is that I want to make sure that this is so on everyone's radar, that this isn't like kids go to middle and high school and they're just on screens all day and not talking, if that makes sense.
And can I just add to this, because you were talking about your son's wonderful teacher, and I feel we've been so lucky with our children's teachers. So, and I never want to, I don't want to do or say something that could make a teacher's life harder, because teaching, it's hard. It is so rewarding. It's so hard. And I think when I'm talking about these, programs or websites or the way that they're writing essays, I think that teachers do have to be brave, but I mean, administration has to make brave choices, and there has to be a culture change, because teachers are going to use what administration is telling them to use. So you can move it so much, but you're going to lean in and use the things that you are being asked to use. And I think we sort of like woke up and everything looked different. The textbooks sort of weren't on the shelves anymore. It happened so slow and so quickly. But I feel like there has to be some type of balance between, you need to be brave and make brave choices in your room, but you need that support, for that culture change.
Mm-hmm.
This is fascinating and scary also, I will say. Randy, New York, you made a comment about the fact that, years ago, all your kids were your kids, as you defined them. They were with a novel. There was always a book, and they were reading. If they had like everybody had a book in their backpack, and everybody was reading. And you made me think. And I'll tell you that a couple, like fast forward to 10 years from school, when kids are getting to the age of 20 or so, maybe a month or 2 months ago, I spoke with a person who actually contacted me from the community, and he told me that he is so worried. He is a parent, but he's also a very senior engineer at a big company, Comcast. And what he has described is that he's been doing this for many, many years, 20, 30 years. And he told me that just in the last 5 years, or maybe a little bit more than that, he has noticed the difference, that the new level, the new young engineers that are just starting, their level of, it's not about the coding. He wasn't really able to explain it, but the depth that they can go into is much less than before. And since I spoke with them, I spoke with professors in universities and in college and teachers in different, subjects. And I hear this across the board. I'm a medical educator. I teach residents and students and fellows. And just a few days ago, I was sitting with my team, and including medical students. And I was asking them, listen, how are you? I'm curious. In your preclinical years, meaning when you read, when you learn about biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, all that, how do you read? Because I know how I read and how I studied medicine. It was a long time ago, but not that long time ago. We had books. We had Harrison textbooks of internal medicine of God knows how many pages, and this physiology and Netter and so many books. Yes, we had also computers to supplement the graphs or the pictures of the body, but it was mostly highlighting, taking notes on the book, writing. And when I asked the students, I was surprised. They said, yeah, there's no more books. Like we don't read from books anymore. And I asked many students, and that's the case. Most of the people are using from, different software. And one of the things that they use often in all classes is basically kind of like flashcards, meaning that you have ultra digested, processed information that is helpful, but, mnemonics of lupus, how to identify this, how to identify heart failure, but it's not the same in depth. And since then, I've been speaking in the last month with also other educators who teach in the medical school, and they see the difference. And my question, that's a long introduction for my question, is on the flip side, many parents I hear saying, well, we are in an era of technology. This is not going backwards. We're in an era of AI, computers, cell phones. It's probably going to progress even more so. So it is critical that the children will be immersed with technology and feel comfortable with it as they grow to the real world as adults. And I wanted to ask all of you, what is your opinion about this? About the whole, do we really need this technology to familiarize our children with the real world?
Definitely not. The answer would be a very conclusive no, because when that young engineer goes to the company, they have a certain software they use, and they will train that engineer on the software, and they'll learn. Kids taking a test, if it has to be on the computer, they will practice the day before for 20 minutes how to open the toolbox, and now they could do that task. We need to learn the facts, the deep dives. And by saying, oh, we're teaching with technology, no, what we're doing is teaching kids, Google the question, here's the quick answer. No student is diving deeper and saying, oh, I need to get another book. Was that reference right? Cross-checking their references, getting more information on it. And that's one of the greatest fears with AI is totally taking away that ability to dig down, check sources, check your references. It's just, oh, there it is. Good. I'm done. Spit it out. Finished. You never have that deep dive, even though AI will say we're going to go do the deep dive. The student, the person never gets gritty enough to actually learn that material.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the opposite. We using too much technology to learn the concepts, to understand the material, to is not helping you later to use technology, like you said, when you go to an engineering firm or whatever profession you end up in. The use of the technology isn't all that hard. I mean, it's designed to be easy. The user interface is designed to be user friendly. So using technology, I mean, there are some skills, and in our group, we've talked a lot about the difference between learning technology, to learning about technology. And sure, there's things we should learn about AI. We should learn about how to do a good, uh, proficient Google search and really use that as a tool. That can be done relatively quickly, but that's very different from using technology to learn mathematics or whatever subject, chemistry, English, history, all of them. And so it's really it's the opposite. You want to I think the best way to learn to really understand a topic is not to be doing it on technology. In fact, I love a quote that I say it a lot, and I stole it. I didn't write this myself, but it says, the best preparation for a digital future is an analog childhood.
I absolutely agree with that. And I will just say that I do have a spouse that works in technology. at a major technology company, and one of the things he always says to me is the easiest things to teach people are the tech
Yeah.
because that can be taught, right? Um, what is hard to teach people is perseverance, work ethic, dedication, eye contact, how to collaborate with others, how to keep your cool when you're frustrated, all of the things that we hope that they gather like while they're learning in a classroom. That is very important, and I don't really know how many bosses are going to want to teach those types of skills when you it's just something I always think about. And I also know that I have put myself in a position where I'm doing all these things that I haven't done before, and I've had to do some technology that I haven't even used myself, and I couldn't believe how I was able to figure it out myself because I know how to learn. I know how to read a manual. I know how to, like, whichever way. Some people learn
Yeah.
from videos. I don't. I learn better when someone shows me or from reading. Like, you learn how you learn, and then you find that way to do it. And that is something we need to help our kids get to. We were going to start with some Q&A. We have some good ones. One person had asked if any of us are currently teachers in the classroom, and that was actually the point of this, was to be able to have a mix. So both Randy and I are current third grade teachers right now, full time, 100%. I always joke they're going to have to drag me out in like a walker and a cane because I love it so much. And Dean, you only just retired, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, and Randy, after 32 years, retired, but is still active as a substitute. And that was intentional to have people that are still very much with a lens of what is happening. Because I will tell you, as a teacher, there is nothing worse than somebody who taught for like a year or two, and then what do? They tell teachers what to do. That was one of my personal pet peeves in my career,
Yeah.
because teaching for 1 or 2 years and then acting like you know how to teach and you know it all is rough. And a lot of people do kind of teach and then move on to the next role, the next role. Um, Somebody wanted to mention this is a great idea that Dean, what you were describing is called phubbing, which is when you kind of like you don't pay attention to someone you're with because you're on your phone. They're saying that it sounds like there could be another type of name for that for when it's a child with a school issued device or a computer instead of a phone, which is definitely like a good analogy. So this question is, do you have any advice for how to inspire teachers who have expressed concerns or hesitancy with scaling back tech use? We've heard from many teachers that they enjoy using YouTube, iReady, and assigning digital homework. We've heard from others that reducing reliance on tech is a burden.
I would I would say an answer to that would be to encourage the teachers to become more involved with their union, because when you can go to your union and say, "Hey, we've got a problem in the classroom with the technology," and you can discuss it there, you then have a more powerful group of teachers who can go on your behalf to say, "We'd like to reduce this load of technology that we're encouraging our teachers to do." And I also just think a good conversation with each other of saying, "I got rid of this technology and it's really made my teaching career so much more fun and so much more uh, rewarding." So I do think conversation, but I also think if you can get in with your union as a teacher, the teacher should get more involved. And for parents, have that line of conversation with your teachers.
And one thing I want to add about the unions, they're starting to realize how impactful and important this is. Just last week, Randy Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers Union, came out with this wonderful speech called "Devices Down, Heads Up," I believe. And then this week, I'm in New York, and the New York State Teachers Union came out with something, and they're basically moving in the exact direction that we've all been talking about for quite some time of like remember when we were younger, there were no devices for children that were young. Like even when there was a computer lab, I believe the earliest that started was third grade. Does that sound right? Like, and third grade was when you would go like once a week for a period. It was a technology class, not a let's put technology in everything. And that's sort of the difference now is that there's just too much access that it's overtaking everything. And I think unions should be giving like teachers a voice if they are afraid, but also the districts need to supply resources to teachers. And I made like a teacher wish list of supplies from the district. You are going to over rely on screens when you don't have books, when you don't have materials, when you don't have what you need to do your job. What other job, like, do you not have the tools you need? Like, you're a doctor. You wouldn't be expected here to go do surgery without your tools, right? Like, so I do think part of the problem is resources, and districts need to supply that. That does not fall on teachers. And the union should, I think they're finally getting to a point where they're going to start helping us with this struggle. Dean or Randy, did you want to add anything about like advice to inspire teachers who've expressed concerns or hesitancy, or ones that actually do enjoy using the digital platforms?
I do think that it's helpful if you know there is another teacher or other teachers in your school that really uses reduced technology. Ask to go and, observe them and watch part of their day. And, I think that could sort of snowball, that you could then approach administration and, share maybe some insight and observations. This worked really well. I noticed students were more engaged. I noticed students were paying attention for longer.
Also, I would add that there is a place for technology, not just in the teaching about technology, but I do think, and this might be a little controversial in this group here, but I think there are definitely applications. I mean, in my experience in high school, with math and also with talking to other teachers, there's simulations is a good example where a computer can
Yeah.
simulate. One of my favorites is because I love political science and thinking about that, and gerrymandering, where they divide up the districts in a way to make sure that one party will win all the seats in the state. There's a simulation where the students can play around with, draw the lines and change it and try to see how far they can go in gerrymandering a state into a different set of districts. And that's just a powerful way. You can never do that on paper. And I mean, you probably could think of a way to do it on paper, but
Yes.
it's a place where the computer really does add value to the teaching of a subject. In that case, social studies. So I would say to a teacher who wants to use technology, go for it. There are places where it can be used, and it should be limited, and it should be intentional, and it should be only when the computer clearly adds value to the teaching process. But
Yeah.
that's it.
I'll give another thing. I think it's so funny now that the new narrative is like passive versus active, and that anything passive is bad. It's funny because watching a movie as a family is technically passive because you're not creating or making something, but I think that's an incredibly special moment for a family to watch a movie, laugh together. So one of the things that I do is, like, right now I'm teaching a unit on marine life. We've read books, magazines, articles on these animals. But you know what? I am going to show a clip of today we saw the cutest thing of what happened when a penguin is born, and how like there's really tough love from the penguin mom to get the like, that was being able to show a 3-minute clip that I have pre-vetted, that I'm sitting with my class for this moment. Okay. I'm not in the back of the room doing something else. It's short, it's intentional, it's collective learning. We're watching it together, we're discussing it. Like, that is a great, like, there is a place. Now you might say that's passive, but it isn't. We're having conversations. Sometimes we'll take notes. So there is obviously times. I mean, I've been so over analyzing my own teaching now as I do this work, and I'm laughing because I'm like, I am definitely not against technology at all. It's just every time I use it, it's like a community thing, or it's with other kids, and it's very limited. Like you said, it's very intentional, and it's nothing that like I'm not going to have my kids play math games on any sort of a device one-to-one anymore, when I can teach 2 kids a math game, and then they can teach the rest of the class, and they can play math games together all year. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why are they playing one-on-one? Because the computer isn't going to cheat, and they're not going to learn how to deal with that. So I just feel like there's definitely no anti-tech here, but it has almost, the pendulum swung too far from COVID that it's being used for everything.
So talking about the pendulum that has swung too far, I received a WhatsApp message from a teacher and parent. And this is a question about, kind of, in a way, is it too late? And the question is, you feel there's way too much education technology, and meaning we should absolutely go back to the books and to the basics and the traditional human teaching. And what I'm hearing from many teachers like yourselves is that this often is really driving teachers crazy from being a teacher for the human connection, they have to run around like Jill was describing before on the Chromebooks and see, and then the other person, the child is moving, because it's not their fault. They're addicted. These apps and the Chromebooks and, and the Google and the internet, it makes it very addictive. So the teacher has to be kind of like a digital babysitter. And what I'm hearing is that often it's really driving teachers even into early retirement, this whole environment. But at the same time, I also hear that teachers, especially the newer ones, are kind of used to this, including using the smart board that maybe is playing a YouTube video. They're used to not grading the tests or the work with a pen, but doing it automatically, which saves times. And and many people are saying, is it already too late? Like Jill was saying that there's no more resources. Maybe there's no more at this point, like people are not making the textbooks enough for mathematics, etc. So I think I wanted to ask, maybe start with Randy from New York, because you've been doing this the longest. Do you think that this is reversible, that we can restore back the pendulum to have a little bit of computers, but the vast majority of the teaching will be with a human connection?
Oh, of course. I mean, look at any corporate executives and Silicon Valley executives. They're all sending their kids to Waldorf schools, no tech schools. So is it reversible? Definitely. All you need to do is do it. And when we keep hearing the word intentional, like my friend Emily Turkin says, we need to be tech intentional. I need to teach everything I'm great at. And if there's some simulation that an app will do that we can use together, great. If there's a discrepant event you can show on your smart board for 30 seconds and then talk about, great. I continued to use tech. I would sign out the Chromebooks for one day, go in my lab, and I would use data logging software in the lab. So the kids would have the temperature taken every 30 seconds. It would be graphing. We would do that and then come back and analyze all of that data from paper. The kids are relieved when we take the technology out of the classroom, when we get it out of the way. They're relieved. They go home and they're sucked into it. At school, we provide that safe place where we can say, we're not going to use that. We're going to be present, me and you guys. And they appreciate that. They're children. They soak everything up. So it's never too late to help those kids. So yes, definitely it's reversible. And we can do that.
The next question I have is actually one of my favorite. How do you address the differentiation as something that EdTech is able to provide versus difficult otherwise? And this question is my favorite because this is what got me into EdTech. I was like, this is going to be how I can differentiate better. No, it's not. So I'll if someone else wants to speak to this first, and I can explain how I differentiate in my classroom and what things I think are needed for that to be successful in a way that I don't think EdTech even comes close to in an elementary setting in my personal experience.
I can speak to, I think when you're using programs that are being used to help you differentiate, I would challenge anyone to, outside, then you're meeting with your small groups. You've got other groups that are using, an app to differentiate. And then is the teacher then analyzing? Are they truly analyzing what that child is doing on that differentiated program? I think then the teacher takes a passive role in that case. And well, that's kind of being taken care of because I'm differentiating. This program is doing it for me. When you're meeting in a small group for math centers or, guided reading, you really know down to just even in elementary school, things like whether a student's flipping numbers or they're not lining up their place value spots. They can ask you a question right then and there and you can answer it. That is true differentiation. I can then, make snap decisions in the moment. Talk about fractions, like, oh, he's really not understanding fractions on paper. Let's go get some Play-Doh. Let's break the Play-Doh up into pieces. Let's use Legos to do it. I can make those decisions and then, change my groups, and things can be very flexible. I don't think that that same situation can be said for when we leave it up to a screen.
Randy or Dean did. Oh, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, I'm going to be a contrarian again there. I think in some situations, technology can individualize, which is what differentiation is all about. Individualize uh, for routine practice, not for the instruction, not as the primary delivery method. But I have a good friend who teaches physics, and in high school, if you're teaching a pretty advanced physics class, and there's an opportunity to there's a thing called WebAssign, which allows you to it creates questions. It's a very automated kind of program, but you can tell it which topic, and then you can send the kids off on it for a period of time, not all the entire period, not every day, but it's a pretty powerful way. And then each student is getting questions at the level of difficulty that they can handle. They're not being bored by the easy ones or being blown away by one that's too difficult. That's for some classes, I think that's an appropriate use.
And I can only speak to the elementary side. Dean, I
Yeah.
totally defer to you.
I was just thinking of there is definitely a difference between, first of all, the subject area, the age, and like I can see that making sense. Like in an elementary classroom, I'm also thinking like we want to teach skills before screens. And we're, of course, like primary, it's like the primary, basic level of skills that they're trying to get to before we move up to that more intense. This is what I think. I think that there needs to be whole class and small group instruction. I think whole class instruction is important because no matter what level the child is on, they need to have experience to grade level content and then have the opportunity to hear from their peers and collaborate. I think small group instruction is important for differentiating, but differentiating doesn't need to be personalized. Like there is no world where any of us are going to get, maybe with the exception of like a specific medication for a medical issue, exactly 100% what we need to be successful. Like that's not the real world. But is it possible for me to have 4 reading groups and 4 math groups, and I meet with one group and I give them what they need while the rest of the class does a task? Absolutely. What makes it easiest for me to differentiate and dive in with those small groups? Small class sizes. When does small class size not matter? Oh, if everybody's going to sit with a one-to-one device and get adaptive personalized learning and the teacher is a facilitator like in an AI school, to me, so many of these issues are intertwined. Like you also need curriculum that has strong materials. I am not saying the curriculums that my district use are perfect, but I will tell you that I want for nothing. I have small group reading resources. I have whole class resources. I have a math program where if someone's not understanding it, I can print a sheet because I have a classroom printer, another essential for all elementary classrooms, where I can print the lower level sheet. And guess what? I might not think to photocopy that ahead of time in the morning because I might not know that Dean is struggling right now with this. And I'm going to go quickly to my computer, print this lower level sheet, print it, boom, now you have it. Everybody might get it. Then this same program also has an enrichment level sheet. So if you are giving teachers, and I'm not told you must do this, you must do that. So I have flexibility, I have autonomy, which is great, but I also have the basics, which is a curriculum that gives me what I need to differentiate, books at different levels, math resources at different levels. Like that's what we need. We need small class sizes so we can really work with those kids, and we need materials. And I don't think anything beats that, plus the human connection. The feedback that a child, especially a young one, gets from their teacher, I think means so much more than like, I don't know, a big check on the screen if you got it right. But like I said, I see the complete difference of like higher level math, Dean, like doing practice problems. That seems like a very different, thing than like an elementary classroom where they're learning the basics. So I've never taught in a world, it's my 20th year where we weren't expected to differentiate. So I've never needed to think that I had to do it through EdTech. Like that sometimes earlier in my career, I did use that for the early finishers, which bit me in the butt because guess what? They're finishing early just so they can use the device so that they can fool around. So no early finishers ever do I give a device because it's like they're not really doing their work.
No, that's right on. That's right.
Yep.
Let me ask. I'm sorry.
I think that administrators really push the issue. Oh, we are differentiating. We have great equity. And that's what the Chromebooks do, which is so false because what most schools settle for the lowest common denominator, like iReady, and it's not differentiated learning. It's just this kid finished this one block, they go to the next one. It's the same exact questions to all the kids, but just one got through them all and got to the next level for the new questions. The other one's still lagging behind. And it's not the teacher seeing, exactly like Randy said, not the teacher interacting and seeing where they're going wrong with learning that material. And most kids on this differentiated learning on the computers just try to whip through as fast as they can to see if they do it enough, they've got the answers. Now they can memorize it for the quiz, get to the next level. And that's not doing any good for differentiation.
Let me ask a follow-up question to, we don't have in this group currently a teacher that is a teacher of middle school, but Randy and Jill, you're working with a lot of different organizations. And I think it's a very practical question because many people in the audience here are actually from Lower Merion. And as we speak right now, in the last few weeks, there is a change of policy and creation of a new policy or attempts to create a new policy in our district. And they really take the input of the community members, parents, etc. And some of the questions are related to K-8. And my specific question to you is, how would you recommend when I write a recommendation for the board, when I make a request, what should I ask for K-8? No education, because the way that I'm seeing it, based on all that I know, is no education technology, no computers to be used as regular education for core subjects like math, etc., and to use intentionally, like Emily Churkin says, technology education, to just basically use computer carts or labs to maybe learn about computers or maybe just before a specific test, etc. How do you see it?
I think that parents should be requesting that the technology be removed from the classroom. Offer the carts, they can be signed out. That forces the intentional use. If your school says, but our state assessment is on the computer, that's fine. Jared Horvath has got all the research and the neuroscience behind. Teach it 3 days, 20 minutes a day. They'll know how to take that assessment on the computer. Use that research, use that data for your argument. And always come back to the argument of it's about relationships. And everyone says, we want to go back to the good old days. Well, great. What were the good old days? It was pen and paper. It was teachers sitting with kids. It was noisy classrooms of kids discussing things and discovering. And bring out those ideas versus the assumption that if an administrator walks by a quiet classroom where kids are staring at their screen, that, wow, that's the modern classroom. That's not. That's the modern death of education.
Yeah.
I worry about we talk about carts as being maybe a way to moderately have technology. I worry about the carts as a solution because, the way the carts are managed, a lot of times it's each computer has a number on it, and each kid knows my computer is number 15 or number 18. And then that becomes their computer. And I don't know how, it depends how the teacher handles it. And I think it's a slippery slope. And I think having the cart in the room in middle school, it's like a big temptation sitting over in the corner. And I'm not sure if it would work. I think that's a question that I would ask before anybody starts thinking of carts as a solution to this.
I'm aware of a district that's doing. Say that again, Randy.
I'd like them to be signed out, like they're kept in the library, and you'd sign them out for that day
Yeah.
you need them.
There you go. But if each room has a cart in it with the number of computers equal to the number of students, that's pretty close to 1-to-1.
I love that you're saying this because I may live in a district that just released a tech plan tonight that said we're moving from one-to-one personalized devices to access with a classroom cart. So I can't wait to ask more about that because to me, just not keeping it in your what they're calling it the seat sack or in the desk, it's the exact same thing if it's in a cart and there's one for each student in the room. that is the same thing. Like, honestly. So hopefully it's not, and it should be like a cart. Like we used to when we were a cart system, we would do exactly what you said, Randy. The cart was housed at parts of the building, and you would sign it out and then get the cart for that period. And what's interesting though is like I literally have a cart in my room with a one-to-one device for every student, but you wouldn't even know it because it's so used infrequently. It's a magnetic cart, so I have all my magnets with things on it. I have the easel in front of it. So it's funny because I hate to advocate against something that I actually have, but I just don't use it. So it in a way feels like I don't have it. Like I could easily be in a cart system and be fine because I know when I need it. My parents are getting headphones back this year that have never been opened. We have not touched headphones this year because why do I need my children to be strapped to a device where they are not with any other child? I'd have no need for that. I also don't have any students with special needs that needed that type of an accommodation. Obviously, anybody with special needs or specific adaptive learning software that they need for a 504, which is like, an accommodation plan. This is not what we're talking about now. We're talking general. But I agree. I'm very wary about some of these solutions that you need more of the details, right? We have another great question. What's the best way for parents to start to get honest answers about how much tech their kids may be using each day? My kids are elementary, and it seems hard to know how much tech they're exposed to in the classroom when we're not there.
I would start by just asking their teacher. Just email and ask, or ask to set up a phone call. And, I think that's the first step. The principal doesn't have the same idea as the teacher. I think that's the first thing you would do.
Yes, I definitely agree. Always talk to the teacher first and be curious, and get information from them because as we know, like our kids are not always reliable at answering, questions. But you also have a legal right to know this information, and you can email the director of technology and you can ask to see the usage data for your child. And if they don't give you that, you have a right of a Freedom of Information Act. It just depends how, high you want to go. And Randy, you could probably speak more to Andy Liddell and how wonderful he is for helping parents when they want to know more about this. But you don't necessarily have to go up to here. I'm just saying there is a trajectory.
And
Yeah,
and
well, I'd
some
like to add
districts,
that it shouldn't be that hard to do. It should be something that's routine. One of the recommendations we have for Lower Marion that we're bringing to the board or have brought to the board is transparency. And there should be
Yeah.
we know it's technically very easy for the IT department of a school district to know to get data on exactly how many minutes each day uh, in each classroom is technology being used. And actually, more fine-grained too is what websites are the students on? Because if they're not on the
Yeah.
EdTech site and they're actually, on, TikTok or something, well, that's another problem. So that data should be routinely available.
and there is software that the IT guys can load on,
Sure.
so parents can actually just look at the iPad or the Chromebook and see they spent an hour and 45 minutes on Tuesday on YouTube, they spent this much on Google, they spent this much on TikTok. It will break down all of that.
So we're at time, we're actually over time, but I wanted to conclude by saying I've learned so much and, I would love to have this type of meeting again. I mean, there's so much and I apologize for all of those who wrote their questions and we didn't get a chance to get to them. So many good questions. But generally, there's just so many more topics that we can discuss. And even within this group of teachers, we don't necessarily agree on everything. It could be that Dean perhaps has some feelings that maybe education technology for certain purposes, math, etc., could be useful and others not. But I've learned so much from you. And I just wanted to ask if you have, first of all, thank you for all of you, including the attendees, for joining us and for your insights and teachers. And if you have any last minute comments that you want to share, insights or any tips.
I just wanted to say that I think that we are all supposed to be on the same team, like school, your teacher, your school community, parents, kids. This is vital for school to work. And asking your teacher these kinds of questions and framing in a way where, we're working on things at home. We're very, mindful of screen time. And, I want to be more, I want to have a clearer picture of what's going on. What kind of things are they looking at? I think if you frame it in that way, because that's the other thing with these Chromebooks and other devices, is it's really breaking down even the way now things like Power School and stuff where we check grades. This is another block between that really vital connection between teacher, parent, and child.
I hear very often from parents that I talk to and question me, they're concerned about school. They're so concerned, they're thinking of trying to break the bank to go to private school because they don't use screens at home, or they really limit screens at home. And then their child goes to school and they're confronted with the screens. So what I would say to parents is definitely that open line of communication with your teacher, and know that you're not alone. Join groups that are available, webinars like this, but talk to other parents. Talk to other parents in that classroom. And when you can have another person, 3 more people, 4 more people with you, your voice carries a lot more power. But know that teachers want your input. So if you have concerns, talk to your teachers.
The one last thing I'd like to add is just when you think about the big picture in society right now, social media was one thing, AI is a whole nother level, and we're going through an incredibly monumental change in how society is organized. And schools can be, should be a little bit of a haven from that, a place where let's have one place at least where we're not hooked on our screens, and use it intentionally, use it when it's good for education, but really I think this movement that we're talking about is part of a much larger movement, which is how to deal with this incredible social change that's sweeping over us, right now.
Yeah.
Jill, any last comments? And thank you again for moderating as always. I love it.
I just want to say, thank you so much to the parents and teachers that are advocating for children like this. We are all on the same team. And the worst thing that I think we can do is ever try to put a divide between the parents and teachers, especially because most of us are both, right? And that it's us uniting towards what's best for kids. And that's what's going to help our children, and think of things that we can ask the district for that will help everyone. Small class size, resources. I really do believe that also helps. It's best practices, but it will also help with this as well. And if you guys have any questions that you didn't get to answer, if you want to, do they have your email address? I'm more than happy to answer and support. And thank you guys so much for caring about this topic, because I can't tell you how many platforms I've taught over my career that literally don't even exist anymore. There's really not much I can be doing in an elementary classroom that your child's going to need as an adult. I can assure you that is from a screen. There are some things, remember, also, I'm not high school, but most elementary classrooms really need that hands-on and that play.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll share is that after this hour and 15 minutes, I feel personally joy and hopeful. So thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jill and Yair, for pulling this together.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, guys.